Welcome to the Lean Podcast, where empowerment and alignment come together. I'm your host, Mahogany, here to guide you through inspiring stories of resilience, overcoming grief, health challenges, career struggles, and more. Together, we'll lean into strength, embrace growth, and discover the power of sharing experiences. Before we dive into today's episode, I'd like to start with a prayer. If you feel comfortable, I invite you to join me. Dear God, thank you for this space to uplift, inspire, and empower. Bless the woman sharing her story today and those who are listening. May this podcast be a source of hope, healing, and alignment with your purpose for our lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Hello. Help me welcome our guest, Nicole, today. She is a mom, she's a nurse, and she is a multi-passionate entrepreneur who's done just about it all. So we're going to hear from her today about grief, business, and career, and just how she juggles life as she is being successful in business. So help me welcome Nicole.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for being here, Nicole. I'm so happy I feel like you're here with me. I feel like we're just going to be sitting here sipping on some tea and just talking about life and the things that we've been faced with. So before we get started, help our audience get to know you a little bit more beyond the titles that you have.
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Nicole. First and foremost, I am a mother. I have a 10-year-old daughter and I have an almost 13-year-old son. I am a nurse. I have been a nurse since 2006, and I've been in nursing leadership since 2011. I was a supervisor, a manager. I've been a director for about the past 8 years. And I love my W-2 job. I just love the opportunity to serve our teams and serve our patients. And then in about 2018, I got the bug for entrepreneurship, and I'm happy to talk a little bit about that. But I started an e-commerce business, and then I'm a coach. I'm a holistic life coach as well. So what that means is that when I coach, I not only connect with people's goals and dreams, but we look at their life holistically. A lot of times people come to me for business or finance, but then we end up looking at all the areas of life to see what might be impacting that. So like the spiritual, the financial, the emotional, all of it. So that's really what I help my clients work through.
Wow.
I should also mention too how we met. I'm a real estate investor. So yeah, I own 3 long-term rentals in my local area. And I really owe that to Springboard to Wealth and the community that we have there. So
yes, and I actually met Nicole through Springboard to Wealth, you guys. So we are part of the same real estate community, and I'm just so happy to know her and my other sisters in Springboard who are like, I'll come speak on the podcast. I'll share my story. So I'm like, I love you guys. Thank you for the support. You guys are my girls for life. But we do know that business is not always glitter and gold. And we're going to get a little deeper into that. But if you could share with us, how did you decide to get into business to begin with?
Yeah. So in 2016, both my parents died 4 months apart. So my mother was in her late 50s. My father was in his late 60s. He passed first suddenly. And then she passed away 4 months later from very aggressive cancer. So that was a really rough year for me. I was also getting divorced at the time, which thankfully, though my divorce was hard, it was very hard to separate my family. It was very amicable, and I was still, overall friends with my ex-husband, still am to this day. But that was a really, really tough year for me. I was still in the nurse manager role at the time. I don't think I had become a director yet. All that to be said, it was 2 years of like pretty hardcore grieving for me. And in 2018, my daughter was still very young, and I found myself going back to Poshmark. My mom was always on Poshmark. She had a Poshmark closet. And while she was alive, I thought it was kind of like the silliest thing. Like, who would buy anything on this app, used items, like I don't get it all, but she just loved it so much. I remember her being like so excited. She was a nurse too, but she also had a secondhand store that she opened part-time, and she just really enjoyed that on the side. So I kept finding myself like drawn back to her Poshmark closet. And it was almost like very spiritual. I got this idea that I would open a Poshmark closet with my daughter Hazel as a way to keep that connection with my mother. It was something that I planned on doing together with her. And that's how it started. We started selling children's clothes, and they started selling right away. And I was like, what is this? I can make money this way. It was just kind of like a fun on the side type thing. But then it just kept growing and growing. And soon I was selling women's clothing. And then for the past several years, I've niched down to selling mainly shoes. I'll sell a little bit of bags, but everything, it sounds funny, but everything about selling shoes on Poshmark and eBay excites me. I love sourcing them. I love listing them, shipping them. I have like a really strict routine on the ends of my day. I get up very early to do my shipping, and it's almost like cathartic for me. It's like, I don't have to put a lot of deep thought into it. But I am just taking that time for myself, I guess. And I'm making money, which years later, after finding Springboard to Wealth, I started investing in real estate. So it's been kind of like full circle.
Wow. So how long have you had your shoe selling business exactly?
Yeah. So I started in 2018. I would say I've been selling shoes primarily since probably like 2022. It's been a couple of years. And I found kind of niching down and becoming very expert and efficient in my processes around shoes versus having processes for multiple things has actually made me a lot more income that way.
I love it. I know you said that for you, it's like something you're excited to do step by step by
Mm-hmm.
step. In the beginning of your grief and experiencing Poshmark in a different light, has it always
Mm-hmm.
been that type of excitement, or did other emotions come with it at first?
Mm. I wouldn't say it was passion at first, but it felt important. It felt like it was a deep connection to my mom after, she was gone. So yeah, it really did help me to move through the grief of her loss. And her and my father were actually divorced. But they had a very close relationship, especially towards the end. They were best friends. And so it helped me to feel a deeper connection to him as well.
I love that. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a lot of times, those of us who work through our grief intentionally, it seems like it always ends up being some project, like some beautiful thing that's come out of the grief. Would you agree
Mm-hmm.
with that? And did you know right away, like, this is going to help me heal?
I don't think I knew right away, but I would completely agree with that. And it's also kind of interesting because as a child, I would say I did live below the poverty line. My life was a little bit tumultuous. I lived with my dad 4th through 10th grade. Both my parents actually suffered from addiction issues. And, I went to every school in my district. I know everybody has a story about their childhood, right? So it always felt like I was like out of control and like in lack and like I didn't have enough. And yet I knew my parents loved me, and I still believe to this day that they did the very best that they could because they had things that happened in their childhood that were out of their control, right? That contributed to all of this. And so I've kind of seen my journey, my businesses, my career as a nurse, like my mom, all of it is to kind of like break that cycle for my family, right? And all of that is part of the healing. So to bring that full circle, like starting the Poshmark to honor my mom, it led to so many greater things for me outside of, just selling shoes online. So I don't know. It just is all kind of connected together for me.
I love that so much. I do. I think mostly because I know you may know a little bit about my story, but I did come from a mother, and she did down the line start abusing
Mm-hmm.
substances. And I just feel like to have that drive to keep pushing through despite
Mhm.
having a childhood like that, there's something special about you. Would you say that you would have pursued being a business owner if you hadn't gone through those trials, or how do you think that would have looked for you if you would have kind of had the golden spoon in your mouth already?
Yeah, absolutely not. I doubt it, at least. I don't have, a crystal ball to go backwards either, but I've thought about this a lot. And while I went through things that probably no child should go through, it really made me resilient and driven. And I did learn some things from my parents, like important things in life. Like I always tell my kids, never get a balloon mortgage, always get fixed rate. Like my dad taught me that. He taught me things. So they taught me good things, but they also taught me a lot of what not to do. And I think there's also so much value in those lessons as well, about like knowing what you don't want and what you do want for your own children, right? And so like all of it, though it was painful at the time, it's my story. It's my story, and it really has propelled me in a direction that I never would have imagined, right? Because I am driven and I am motivated and I am resilient.
I love that. It seems like when those of us who unfortunately go through the childhood traumas, I know we all have traumas to some aspect, but those of us who go through like severe childhood trauma, it seems like you can either sulk in it and be what your parents were, or do everything you can to be the opposite of what your parents
Mm-hmm.
were in many
Mm-hmm.
ways, because I know everyone still has their good parts too. Would you say that, well, do you have siblings?
I do. I have one sister.
One sister. Okay. Would you say that both you and your siblings took kind of the same route of like being everything that your parents weren't? Or was it like a split thing where some siblings did this and then some went this way?
Yeah, I would say, she's a teacher. She's very successful. We both really support each other. We could sometimes have these moments where like we can't believe like what we've made of our lives, right? And truth be told, like my path was not all rainbows and sunshine, even as an early adult. I had a lot to learn. My grandparents were always my rock, and I'm so thankful that I had that. And I had adults come into my life along the way that helped me. I would say she was much more stable than me in her 20s. I actually went through some rocky times, myself, where I didn't do well right out of the gate in college and things like that. And so all that to be said, something clicked in me. I don't know what it was. I know in my mid 20s, I did find Jesus. I did find, my spirituality. And it's like something just clicked in me, and I went to nursing school, and like that's when my life turned around. So I would say she stayed a little bit more on the straight path, whereas, for lack of a better word, maybe I went a little wayward for a while.
Yeah, I always find that interesting in family dynamics, like to see like
Mm-hmm.
who does what and how far do they go. But I'm glad that you made your way back to
Mm-hmm.
doing what your purpose was here to do. So that's amazing. So you went through a lot of grief at one time and loss with
Mm-hmm.
losing two parents and a divorce. How did you even have the strength to like lift your head up to even think to run a business or to even start anything at all? Like,
Mm.
where was your mind at during those times?
Yeah. On my children, Like I knew I had to do it for them. And then I also have a partner in life, and I have my sister and my aunt. They're great support for me. And I have great colleagues at work too. So I would say I had a great support system through it all. Um, but I definitely had my moments. It wasn't easy. There were definitely some downs in there. And within all of that, I think I told you before, I started experience some pretty significant back pain that actually landed me. It lasted a year. It was on and off. It was chronic pain. It would come for days at a time, and it would go away. And every time it would come on, it was not only physically excruciating for me, but it was mentally and emotionally excruciating for me. And so my type of back pain is I would get locked up, and if I moved, I would have pain, but if I just sat on a heating pad, I wouldn't. But I learned later that like really exacerbated things, because you do need to move. And so that was one thing that also happened, and maybe it was a couple years later, but within my business journey, I ended up in the hospital for 5 nights. And it was probably, honestly, that was probably the lowest point since starting a business, was dealing with all of that, the physical, the emotional, the mental, of that back pain.
Wow, yeah, the back pain is no joke.
No
Mm-mm.
joke.
I
Yeah. And
hear
I
things.
have scoliosis. So
Mm.
it was weird. I went through my whole life with nothing, and then all of a sudden it came on.
I'm going to talk to you more offline about how they got to that
Mm-hmm.
scoliosis diagnosis. Because sometimes I'm like, y'all ain't getting it. Because people are telling me
Mm-hmm.
they've had this for a couple months or a couple years and it's gone. Why is mine still here like for 3.5 years? That's crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
So with the back pain, I have been told by different people, and they've shown me different books and things, that pain is energy that has gotten
Mm-hmm.
stuck in the body. What would you say about that?
I do believe that. I believe in energy for sure. And I believe I needed to move too, to look at things holistically. It was after about a year of COVID, to just kind of set the timeline. And I think I had gotten more sedentary. For me, stretching and breathing really helped to release that energy, those emotions. And now stretching is such a part of my life. I even have a mat in my office at work. I am happy to say I've been pretty much pain free for a couple of years. Sometimes I will feel something come on, and I will, in my head, it's just like an emotional trigger, but I try to keep moving. I stretch. I really watch how I am moving. I did have an episode this past year where I stepped wrong, and that was like actually really scary. So I think that's a real fear for me, like having so much responsibility for my children, the financials coming in, and my businesses, like what would happen if I became debilitated again from my back pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something. It's something. So you were dealing with a lot, and
Yeah.
at this time you were a full-time career woman as well as
Hmm.
a starting off business owner, correct?
Yeah, I had at that time, I was a couple years into my e-commerce. I had not purchased any real estate properties yet. But that experience going through that is actually what propelled me to become a holistic life coach. I'm technically a board certified nurse coach. And so what all that means is I use my nursing license to coach people. So they're guaranteed privacy and HIPAA. But that health issue and scare is really what made me want to contribute differently to people's well-being.
I love it. So through your pain, once again, you've
Hmm.
developed a purpose.
Exactly. And that almost feels like the Poshmark moment, moving through the grief. I've maybe never connected it that way before, but here in this moment, it feels that way.
I love it.
Hmm.
So with these businesses, the coaching business, the e-commerce, being a nurse, being a mom, when did you decide? Well, I know you decided to bring real estate on to kind of be more passive for you, but we know that it's not always passive.
Yeah.
Uh, so when did you decide to bring that on board, and how'd you know, like, okay, I can handle this extra thing on my plate?
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago, probably about 3 years ago now. I was just messing around on YouTube, and I saw Robert Kiyosaki. He was the first one that I saw, and I ended up at the Limitless conference that year. And that is where I met Thatch, Stephanie, and the Springboard to Wealth crew. And it was after that conference that I was like, I want to do something with this. And so what I ended up doing is keeping my primary property as my first investment property when I bought a new primary. So that kind of helped me to, one, I would have never thought to even do that, right? It's a certain mindset. But that really has helped to propel the rest of my real estate adventure. Yeah.
That's amazing. How I know grief never truly just goes away, and it's still
Yeah.
so recent, really, for you as well. Do you still have days and moments, or do you feel like
Mm.
you have pretty much poured all of your grief into your purpose?
Mm. I would say it has gotten better over time. And I do pour a lot of my grief, whatever I'm feeling, I do pour it into my businesses, into my goals, right? But there are moments. They're few and far between, but I'll be honest, I was actually reflecting with my family. Last Christmas was very difficult for me. And I don't know why, but I just kept thinking about my parents. And it was just a lot more difficult for me to move through the season. And of course, as a mom, you're trying to put on a happy face. And I think I made it really nice for my kids, right? But internally, I was not doing well. But then this Christmas, it felt so joyous, right? So for me, grief has gotten better and less over time. And sometimes it looks different. Um, Sometimes there'll be a memory or I'll go through my parents' things and it will bring something up. Sometimes it's in a really good way. But at the end of the day, like I really hope that more than anything that I am making them proud and that they see that me and my sister have talked about this, like I am the one that is making that change in my family for my family, like breaking that cycle of trauma and not passing that on to my children. And especially my mom, she was around till my daughter was only like 1, my son was 3, but she loved them ferociously. She traveled here from out of state for both of their births. And I hope that like she's proud of what I've created for them.
I love that so much. That reminds me of my grandmother. So I
Yeah.
definitely feel it. I'm like, oh yeah, that was like a hug. Like, yeah, that's love for sure to do
Right.
all that. So how has business been for you, like throughout these years? Do you have
Yeah.
moments of where you feel like you want to give up, or do you just, you know, how do you handle it all?
Yeah, I think for me, what comes to mind, financially it ebbs and it flows, right? Like I am always investing back into my businesses. So it's really paying attention to my numbers. But like sometimes sales are great and sometimes they're not. And like this year in coaching, I made a decent amount of money. I'm very proud of what I made in the first year, but I spent double investing in myself, and so those are the things that like I'm not sad about that at all because I know over the next years it's going to catapult me. And so yeah, there's been times where sales have been slow and it's just like adjusting, especially in e-commerce over the years. Like during COVID, it was amazing. Like everybody was shopping it online. But I'm constantly evaluating and adjusting things. Same in the real estate market, right? Like we're paying attention to what's happening and running our numbers. And like right now, I just purchased a new property in October. I just got my tenants. They're moving here from California, but then I have another property that's becoming vacant in February 1. So I have to find new tenants. And so there's always things to adjust and things to do. So I think for me, a lot of it is I have everything I need and more from my W-2 job, from my profession as a nurse. What I'm looking for is like for my future, like 10 years down the road. Like, I don't want to be taking losses now. And for the most part, I'm not. But really, my plan is very future facing because while I do love my career in nursing, I would love to retire from the corporate world in my 50s. And I'm going to be 43 this year, so
So you're grinding it out, like, let's
a little
go,
bit, yeah,
aligning
yeah,
with
but
it, like, all right, perfect timing right there. It's time to drop that one.
yeah, yeah, and there is periods of grinding, but honestly, I hired my own one-on-one coach this year, and she is a business mentor, and she does like somatic work as well. And one big thing I learned about myself is that I do need periods where I slow down and I like really think through my plan, and I don't always have to be doing. That was actually a really big learning that I had this year is to just like it is okay to slow down and sometimes you absolutely need to slow down.
That's so true. How do you know when to pivot and what to pivot to? It seems like you've gone through a lot of moments where you're like, okay, we're going to shape it this way, we're going to tweak this the way and do this a little bit this way. Like, how do you know when it's time, and like, what are your indicators, and how do you go about that?
Yeah. So I'll take one of my businesses as an example because it looks different in each one. But in e-commerce, for example, like I said, I started selling everything kind of niche down. So like I know what size shipping boxes I need. I know exactly which angles I turn the shoes in. I know exactly where I source and when I source. You know what I mean? So everything becomes more and more efficient. And the reason, not only because I love selling shoes, everybody needs shoes, right? Like not everybody needs 100 tops, but everybody needs a pair of shoes, or should have a pair of shoes, as a human, right? And so that was also a decision. And like, I had to think about, like, after COVID and after things started to slow down and people are like going back to the stores to buy things, like what do people actually need versus what do they want? And then another example is I was selling on many different platforms, Mercari and all these things. And I did have a cross listing tool, but there was a lot of inefficiencies in that because you have to like unlist items. And so I stepped back, I looked at my numbers, and I was like, by far, I am selling the most on Poshmark and eBay. And what would happen if I like just gave focus to those two platforms? Right now, I sell about equal on each of them, but I often wonder what might happen if I just go down to one platform. So, like, those are the things that I'm always, thinking about and paying attention to.
Yes. Okay. I love it. I love it. What words of encouragement would you
Mm,
give a woman who has lost loved ones
mm,
and is going through a season of loss in general to push forward?
yeah, that's a great question. Mm, I would take the time that you need for yourself, through all of that as much as you can. Take time to heal, and likely healing will not be a linear process. It's different for everyone, and there are ups and there are downs. And everybody's different, but I do believe that in certain times of challenges and griefs, there are learnings and there are things that you can use to actually propel you forward, to grow, to do things that you never thought that you could do, and to honor your loved ones.
You just hit my second question with honoring your loved ones.
Mm,
When can one know that something is what they should be working on in honor of their loved ones, or when it's really them
mhm.
spinning their wheels versus like, okay, I know that this is going to honor my loved one, or is it all up to the
Yeah.
person?
Yeah, I think it would be unique to the person, but some things to look for is, that feeling within you, like I believe in my higher power. I believe in God, but I also, like, one of the biggest learnings I've had to overcome is to believe in myself and to trust myself and to trust my intuition. And so for me, it's like that inner knowing and intuition. And it also does feel spiritual to me. Like, it's something that you really can't explain, but it feels deep, meaningful, purposeful, and like there is something spiritual about it. That's how I knew.
I agree with that. I agree with that for sure. Wow. Well, Nicole, what else can you just share with the women? Anything that you feel like would be beneficial to a woman in business, career, grief, all of it?
Mm. Really, you can do anything you set your mind to. As women, we not everybody has children, but to even be able to like go through that birthing process with your body, like we are capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for. And if you're having trouble, one way that I have really like expedited things and have felt supported is like find a group of like-minded people like me and Mahogany have, within real estate, find a mentor, find a coach. I really believe, I think as women, and I do see this around me, like sometimes we give so much to other people that we're afraid to invest in ourselves. And when I started doing that, my life changed because, like, if you put your own oxygen mask on first, then you're able to serve others more powerfully.
I love that so much. On that note of investing in yourself and investing in people in your life, when do you know, like, okay, yes, you should pay for this service, or you should pay for this coach, or
Yes,
you should pay to get in this group versus get on YouTube where it's free and go learn yourself first? Or like, what's
absolutely.
your thoughts on that?
I love that question. That's one of my favorite questions you've asked. Because I do actually watch a lot of YouTube content, and I really try to minimize my YouTube content to people who are actually going to bring me value. So sometimes I will find people on YouTube that I will connect with. But for me, like when I met Thatch, Stephanie, and the Springboard to Wealth crew at Limitless, the way it wasn't even Thatch and Stephanie, like, yes, I saw them on stage and I was in awe, but the way that, like, that family like brought me in, they were like, come go to lunch with us. And they were just like, anything to help you. Like, you can just, I could feel it once again, like going back to your intuition and feeling that deep connection. I mean, the way I ended up with my one-on-one coach, she actually stepped into a group coaching container where I was getting business mentorship. And she did some like mini one-on-one coaching sessions with us in there. And the way she shifted me in that container, and I experienced some huge ahas about myself that was just like mind blowing. I was like, I have to work with this person. And so for me, it really comes down to that deep, meaningful connection. Not everything is meant to be. And in fact, I see all my clients, I give free sessions first because sometimes it's not in alignment for me. And I want to make sure as the coach that I can serve people deeply and powerfully, and that it's a good fit. So that's the thing. I would search your soul on whether it's a good fit and whether
Mm,
you're getting value.
so important, so important.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I feel empowered already. I feel like this is my little one-on-one consult right here.
Hey.
Nicole, where can the ladies find you if they'd like to connect?
Yeah, I am on Instagram. I am Soul Inspired Coach on there. I do post a little bit of coaching content. I probably post a little more family and real estate content, but it really is, my life. It's the multiple businesses. I just try to share what I'm doing and try to provide value. So I'm on there.
Awesome. And you guys make sure to check out the show description below, because there you'll be able to find the links on where you can connect with Nicole as a coach, just to follow her and see what she's up to. If you want to do some shoe shopping, if
Yeah.
you want to get into some real estate and you want to just know, like, where did she start? She's open to all those things. So make
Mhm.
sure you guys connect down below. Well, Nicole, I really appreciate you taking time out of your Saturday. We are recording on a Saturday to be here with us. And I
Mm.
really can't wait to launch this episode and to see what women it empowers. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into Lean. I hope today's episode left you feeling inspired, empowered, and ready to take on whatever challenges come your way. If this conversation resonated with you, make sure to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. And don't forget to share it with someone who could use a little extra encouragement. The Lean podcast thrives because of listeners like you. So let's continue to build this community. Drop a comment, leave a review, and let us know what topics you'd love to hear more about. And if you haven't yet, be sure to join our Facebook group, the Ladies Empowerment and Alignment Network, where the conversation and support continues every day. Until next time, keep leaning into growth, empowerment, and alignment. Thanks for being a part of the Lean community.